Hey my crafty creatures. So today I wanted to do my own pattern, and this all was sparked by a video I saw of somebody thrifting some clothing, and there was one piece in there that they thrifted that I was just like, I want that. So I decided to try to make my version of it, and there's a couple of things that I did change about it, and I want to show you guys kind of where I'm at right now. And then we're going to be going over into actually making some more changes to that pattern so that I can have a better version of what I want. So just so you know, this is the original shirt that I made using the initial pattern that I kind of created, and I was going to go ahead and do it straight into the fabric that I had chosen, but I decided to do a mock-up, and I am so glad I did because it would have ended up being a little smaller than I wanted to be. Now, the fabric that I'm going to be using is a little more lightweight and it has like a slight more stretch than this one, even though they're both woven. But I think this one came out good. It's just a little bit tight right here in this area, and I want to widen that part. So I'm probably going to end up adding like 1/2 inch to both the front and the back, and then I just want to flare out the side a little more once you go down to the bottom. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into making those adjustments on the pattern. Okay, so I have my pattern pieces here, and right now I just have the 2 pieces, but there will be about, I'd say 4 in total, and then there's going to be some markings for the buttons that I need to put in and the loops that I need to put in for that as well. So what I'm going to do is trace out this pattern so that I can make those adjustments that I need, which is mainly just adding some more space here and here. That way it fits a little bit better. Another thing I want to do is this neckline here, I want to bring that up maybe like 1 inch. That way it's not going down so far. But aside from that, I think that's all I want to do. Everything else seems to work out pretty fine for the original shirt that I made. So let's make those adjustments. All right, so now I have the back and I can do the front. So the front here, I do have it curving out a little bit. I think I'm just gonna leave that exactly the same, just add that 1/2 inch to it. And hopefully that gives me the look I'm looking for. Now for the start, I'm not sure how much extra I'm going to need for it, but I am just adding a little extra, and then I can cut off what I don't need. Hopefully it won't be much. Hopefully I just got the line exactly how I need it. All right. And then I just need to mark on the front where all of the buttons go. And I placed all of the buttons in about 2.5 inches apart from each other, so that's where I'm just marking. And I just realized that's kind of wrong. So from the bottom, I'm going to take a different color pencil and mark in maybe green because I want it to be like a little bit of a split from the bottom. So we're going to do about 4 inches from the bottom, which just gives me a little bit lower. And then we'll do 2.5 inches up from that. So we're just a little bit lower than each one of them, roughly about 1/2 inch, but at least now I know where I need to make those markings on the actual garment. Because the first time around, I wasn't sure where I was going to put it, so I didn't put any markings on these, but I did want to make sure that I put a marking somewhere around here, because that's where I wanted the buttons to start, because I wanted this to kind of flap open. So now I have that same thing going on. The only thing I need to do is cut this out and then do another tracing so that I could do a facing for this. I'll have a facing that goes basically the full length of this, and then it'll come over here to the dart that I have here. So before I forget, let me mark my dart so that I don't forget to put that in there. Now the dart I put in there just to give it a little bit of shape. It's not really doing that much. So I wanted the top to kind of float over my chest and just kind of lay flat. And I felt like adding the dart in there would give that extra little detail. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut it out, and then I have another piece of paper that I can use to trace out the facing for it. With the facing, you can do interfacing with it, but I feel like I want this to have a little more flowy look, so I'm going to leave that part out because it doesn't need that much structure. Okay, so now that I have this, I'm going to change up this curve ever so slightly. I'm just going to bring this part right here out a little bit more before I taper it back up to this. Now I just need to trace out these facings so that they look okay. Well, let's bring back our pattern pieces and trace them out a little bit. Okay, so one thing I know I want is about a 2-inch gap from the lining to, or the outside seam to the end of the facing. Maybe I should do 2.5, just to have that extra space. And also up here, and we'll see where this is 2.5. So, this is 2.5. All right, so that's the back piece. Now let's get the front. And then I just realized I drew this on the wrong way. I'm supposed to draw it on this way. I'm gonna cut this one out and then flip it over so that I don't have those lines distracting me. So I have the front facing marked off, and I'm just gonna add the markings for where the buttonholes are gonna be. That way I don't forget. I have it marked on both pieces. All right, and the only other thing I need is the strip for the loops for the buttons, and those I don't want to put a pattern for that because I know that I just need to get a longer piece of fabric and then cut it down. Okay, so I have the pattern pieces cut out and I have the facing. I haven't decided if I want to do the same fabric as the facing or if I want to use this as the facing so that it kind of matches the shorts I made last season. Well, while I decide on that, I'm going to cut out the other pieces and then I will decide on if I want to do the facing in this fabric or if I just want to keep it with this fabric. I'm probably going to go this route because I want to have that little extra detail in there. And I feel like I'll get that more with this than I will just using that. So I have my pieces all cut out. I have the facing, I have two of the front, and I have two of the front of the fashion fabric. And then I have one piece of the facing for the back, and then the one piece of the facing for the back folded on the fold. And then I have this strip here, which I'm going to use for the buttonholes. And this is about 2 inches in width. And then it has to be at least, I want to say 15 inches long, because I'm going to do 5 strips. And they're roughly going to be about 1/4 of an inch wide. I just did 2 inches because it makes it easier when you're going through the sewing machine. So I'm going to start with sewing this together, and then we'll go on and move to the next parts. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is take this fabric, fold it in half so that the right sides are together, and align it up so that I can put it through the sewing machine. And I'm lining up this edge right here with the edge of the presser foot, and that's where I'm going to be starting my stitches at. Now, because this fabric is a little bit slippery, I have to be mindful that I'm not pulling it too much or tugging in any kind of way to keep it straight. And then I'm lining this up so that there's only just a ever so slightest small amount on the other side of the presser foot, and then I'm just going to feed it through. Now, as I go, I want to make sure that I'm lining the fabric back up and not going any further than where I have my finger at as far as sewing, because I want to make sure that it's straight all the way through. All right, so now that I have that done, I'm going to trim off the excess over here, and then I'll turn this right side out. All right, and I'm going to use this tool here. I've only used it one other time, and that was to do the other version of this. And I had a little bit of an issue with it, but hopefully this time I've learned what I need to do and have an easier time doing it this time around. So what I'm trying to do is get the little latch to hook through the fabric a little bit. That way when I pull it out, it actually goes inside. Okay, I think I got it started. Here we go. Yeah, this definitely went a lot easier than the last time I did it. Definitely have to be careful at the top up here because it can get stuck. All right, there we go. We got it completely flipped. Now I'll go over to my iron and just press it so that it's a little straighter and it doesn't just like continue just rolling over. But after that, I'm just going to set this aside and then get to sewing the shirt together. All right, so now that I have that done, I'm going to start with the front pieces and sewing the darts into place. Now I went ahead and marked them out, and now I just need to line up the lines and sew it all together. Now with this fabric, it was definitely hard to draw these darts on, so I was having a little more trouble than normal trying to line the darts up. And that was just because of the fabric is kind of hard to see because of the different variations in color. So now I can go ahead and press these, and I'm going to press it going upwards so that that lays nice and flat. And then I will also press the string while I'm at it. All right, so I have those pressed, and I actually pressed it down, not up. So I have those pressed, and they are looking quite perfect right now. Now I'm going to get the back piece and sew those together. I'm going to do a straight stitch along each side, and then I'm going to serge those edges so that it doesn't fray. And everything I'm doing a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so I'm just going to make sure all of that lines up perfectly. All right, so now it's time to do the facing, and what I've gone ahead and done is just serge the edge that's going to be free, and we're going to be sewing the side seams together, and then we can attach it to the fashion fabric. All right, now that I have those two sides sewn together, I'm going to serge the edges, and then we can attach it to the fashion fabric. All right, so I have gone ahead and clipped up the armholes for both the pieces. So I have the facing and the fashion fabric all clipped together. I'm going to start with this side and then work my way around to the other side, and then I'm going to finish off with the front and the collar piece. All right, now I can go ahead and start clipping up these front edges to close up that armhole, or not armhole, but the front facing, or whatever you want to call it. I don't even know what I'm saying right now. But I'm going to clip that all together. After I get finished doing all of this, I am going to serge the edges together so that everything doesn't fray or come apart in the end. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot. I have to get the straps ready to go in here so that I can do those all at the same time. Now I just got to figure out which side I want to put it on. And for this side, I put it on my right. So I want to do the same thing for this as well. So it should be this side here. And I'm going to cut those strips, get those clipped into place. That way I don't have to worry about that past the point of actually sewing this. So when it comes to doing these straps, I'm going to be folding it in half, just like that, and then it creates a little loop like that. I want to make sure that the seams are going towards the same side. That way you have a nice neat loop. And I'll do that for each one of them. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack those into place. That way I don't have to worry about it moving. So I'll just do a kind of like a basting stitch just to hold them in place. And I'll do that for each one. So now I have all of them in place, and I'm going to clip these together so that I can sew all the way down the neck hole and then down the front. All right, I'm going to do the same for the other side. I don't need to put anything there because that's where the button's going to go. So I'm just going to be sewing up that side. All right, so now I have everything serged, and I'm just going to go in and clip some of the corners, like the front flap, so that when it goes in, it actually sits nice and flush with a nice little point. Do the same for the other side. And then what we're going to be doing is pulling one of these sides right side out and then putting it into the hole of this side. So I'll probably start with the front and then put it in through here like that. And then we can actually flip this so the right sides are out. And then press everything. And to make sure it's facing the right way, you want to make sure that the fashion fabric is facing the same way on both of these, on both of these. So you have it here, and it's easier because I have contrasting fabric. So we want to make sure that those are touching each other, and then the facings are facing each other as well. And I just want to trim down the seam allowance a little bit. That way it's not too bulky, and then clip the corners a little bit. And I'll do the same to the other side, and then we can flip this right side out and you can kind of see what's going on. And I put this through, I put it through the wrong hole, so I have to take this out. I actually put it through the other side, so it's going through this one and not this one. So I did make that mistake, so I got to take that out so I can redo it. All right, let's try this over again. Do a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I did pull this down just a little bit more since I did trim off a little bit that last time. So I just want to make sure those line up good. And do this correctly this time around. All right, clipping off the corners, trimming that down just ever so slightly. There we go. Now we know we have the right ones with the right one. The right front side to the right back side. Now we can do the other side. And for this side, just to help myself a little bit, get it done a little bit quicker, I'm going to take a safety pin and pin that to the fabric, and that'll just help me feed it and line everything up a lot quicker. All right, now I can pull that out. Just make sure the seams line up as much as possible. Now I can actually sew this straight across. Now we can flip it so the right sides are out. And then we have that nice finished arm seam. So all I have to do now is go in here and just make sure I clip some of these inside curves. That way everything lays nice and flat once I press everything down. All right, so I went ahead and serged the bottom edge just to make it a little easier for when I do the hem. But right now I'm just tucking in those serged edges or threads so that they don't come out or they're not sticking out. So it looks nice and neat. All right, so the last things I'm going to do is I'm going to top stitch all the way around just so that this piece here doesn't go like flip over. It shouldn't do that too much, but I want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I'm just going to do a really close, like 1/8 of an inch from the edge here. And I'm going to do that all the way around, and then I'm going to do the hem, add the buttons, and then I will be done. All right, so now I have top stitch all around the armholes and the front. Now I'm just going to roll the hem at the bottom. I'm going to use the serge edge as a guide. That way it makes it a lot easier for me to just sew everything together. So I'm going to fold it once and then twice. This first part is going to be like the hardest part to go over because it's a little bit thicker. I use the threads to kind of help guide it through a little bit. Alright, all there is left is to match up the buttons with the loops, and it is ready. All right, guys, so I couldn't be more happy with the way this turned out, and I hope you guys learned some things from this video. I will say the only thing I think is a little bit like I probably should have made some adjustments is right here in the armhole. I feel like it's a little bit too big, but since it's summer or about to be summer, honestly, it's not going to make that much of a difference. I could wear this with or without a bra, so all of that is kind of like negated, but I love this extra little detail of having the denim on the inside, and honestly couldn't be more happy with the way this came out. Everything fits exactly the way I wanted to. Okay, so there is one other thing that I probably could just very slightly, and that was for the buttons. I feel like possibly the straps that I made for the buttons are a little bit too long, like only ever so slightly. So with the last one, I did do them at 2¼ and this time I did them at a 2½, and it just depends on what size buttons you use. But aside from that, like everything came out exactly how I wanted it to. It fits nicely, it's nice and breezy. It almost feels like I have nothing on, so that's a win in my book, especially when it's hot. You don't want to feel like you're wearing a whole bunch of stuff on there. So this is nice and breezy, it's comfortable, it hits where I want it to. It's exactly what I wanted it to be. So I am so glad I did that mock-up first. That way I would know instead of just like trying to cut it out directly onto this fabric. So I probably will be making more of these in the future, but I am so glad that this came out like exactly how I wanted it to. So I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.